Hello again, everyone. I was really wanting to make a video that is basically just going to be me, well, let's be honest here, rambling about how much I love this game. Just going to go ahead and tell you right up front, there's not going to be any gameplay or tips or anything. This isn't a guide video. This is just something I really wanted to do because I just really love Octopath Traveler 2. It's definitely, since playing it, is in one of my top 5 games of all times. And considering I've been playing games for like 25, 30 years, there's a lot of games on that list. Now, just a little forewarning for anyone that actually is going to sit here and listen to me. There will definitely be story spoilers about various characters as well as like some of the late game bosses. So if you don't want to hear about any of that stuff, definitely don't stick around. I don't know when I'm going to bring them up. I don't write scripts or anything. So I'm just going to kind of talk about things as they pop into my head. So I just wanted to let people know in case they want to leave. But for those that stick around, I really just want to talk about why this game is just so special to me. And to start, it has been so long since I personally felt so excited for a game to come out. You know, I was one of those kids that I would go to the midnight releases at GameStop and wait for hours because I wanted to get that game and start playing as soon as I possibly could. And, you know, back then, there were always games coming out that I was always just really excited to play. And it's not that, like, games got worse over time or anything, but it's just, it's been a really long time since I've just really wanted a game to come out. And the only reason that even happened was because I just happened to get really bored one day back in January of this year, and Octopath 1 was on Game Pass, and I downloaded it. And I was just like, wow, I can't believe I never knew about this game. I'm not going to really get into how much I love Octopath 1 as well, but, you know, that made me really want to play this. I put a ton of time into the demo because I just couldn't contain my excitement. But this game, and I'm not going to be really making comparisons, like when I make some of these comments, unless I directly say I'm comparing it to something in another game, I'm not trying to make any comparisons, and obviously all this stuff is going to be opinion and just my own thoughts on it, but just, you know, the game as a whole, obviously you can talk about how great the music is, like, you can tell that they put a ton of work into the music, especially if you do compare it to the first game. In a lot of ways you can tell that when they transitioned into this game, you could see the love and care that was put into it in just so many different ways that are improvements on the first game. And the characters, you know, some of these things I'm about to mention, you'll see people talk about, but the character stories, there's certain aspects to them that I just really enjoy. Like, I'm one of the people that just think that every character story was just great for different reasons. And I'm going to start with Agnia, because you know what? This might be an unpopular opinion. I know I'm not the only person that thinks this, but I see a lot of people say that hers is boring and bland and that it's just too happy-go-lucky. But honestly, hers was probably my favorite. And the reason why is not because of the whole, like, oh, she's a cinnamon roll, it's so heartwarming, and, you know. The reason why is because in this, it's kind of a personal philosophy that you see people everywhere, all over the world, that, and this is going to sound weird to say, but they have dreams and ambitions that they never pursue, or they don't even consider trying to pursue them because they either think that it's not possible, or they're just so busy trying to just make it that they don't really think about those sorts of things. You know, they kind of coast through life. And again, I don't want this to come across as like me saying that, like, they just don't have any ambitions in life. It's like, you know, a lot of times people just don't realize it, that there's just things out there that they really would love to do and to pursue and to accomplish in life. And for various reasons, they either don't, or they don't even realize they have them. And it's honestly crushing to me to see that on such a large scale. And that probably sounds weird now that I'm saying it out loud, but going back to Agnia, the reason why I like her so much is because, yeah, her what happens in her story is not, like, gonna change the world like a lot of the other characters. At least not in as big of ways. But the thing I really like about Agnia is she's just like, I have this passion. I am going to pursue this dream no matter how ridiculous it sounds and how silly it may sound to people. And she goes out and she pushes and pushes and pushes until she makes that happen. And I know that, like, a lot of the stuff that happens in that fight is supposed to be metaphorical, and some people I know have said, and I can understand their argument, that you kind of don't feel the same thing when it's like, oh, your character's up there fighting, you know, Dulcinea, but then she's not actually fighting Agnia. What's really happening is Agnia is on stage basically singing her heart out and giving it her all, so much to the point that afterwards, if you catch the line, she actually says that, like, her feet are bleeding, and she just collapses from, like, because she was so, like, in the moment. And especially if you listen to the music, and just imagine being in, like, a big open theater like that, hearing that song just echoing out into the sky, that's just crazy. Like, honestly, that to me is just, I don't know, I just really enjoyed that. And she definitely has, like, my favorite story, because she just pushes for it, and she also supports other people doing those same things. You know, part of the reason that she wants to do that is she wants to inspire other people. You know, she always says she wants to make everyone smile, but, you know, she wants to really inspire people to go out and just be happy. Try to find things in life that you're going to enjoy. And, again, when I see other people not doing this, and it's usually no fault of their own, it's usually a bunch of external circumstances that just stop people from being able to pursue what would make them happy, it's just crushing. And seeing someone that just goes through, and with the support of all of her, you know, traveling companions and family, I don't know, I just really like that. But I could honestly talk about that for a while, but the other stories are great too. I don't want to, like, take away from them. Like, for example, Hikari, he was, like, actually my favorite, like, character in terms of combat to play. But here's something that at least I personally haven't seen anyone say about Hikari, is that his story on the surface actually seems really shallow. You know, his goal, I know that he says that he is trying to, like, he wants to, like, make things right and coup and all that stuff. But he's trying to be king. He's trying to replace his brother, who, again, I know he's, like, evil and stuff. But his goal is to become the king. And the reason why I actually really like how they set it up is that Hikari, if you were to actually, like, say what he's doing in kind of, like, reality, like in our world, that's like someone saying, I want to become, I don't know, the CEO of a company to make it better from the inside. Because here's the thing, most games and stories, it's all about, I'm going to forcefully change this evil, bad thing from the outside. That is almost every single story you'll see, and I'm sure there are probably other stories that do have something similar to Hikari, so I'm not saying those don't exist, but usually you see it the other way around, where it's like, this thing is evil, we need to change it. Hikari takes a much more, I don't know, maybe adult approach, or like realistic approach, where he's like, no, I need to put myself inside of that thing that is currently bad and evil, and I need to change it to make it something positive for the world. And again, I don't really see anybody ever talking about that, and that, to me, like, that was one of the reasons I really liked the story. Now, I don't know why his, like, friend, for some reason, even though his, like, you know, Ritsu knew that he was wanting to change things for the better, I still don't really get that whole part. Maybe somebody can say in the comments to, like, make that make sense to me. I'm not sure why, you know, Ritsu had to die, but, still, the story overall really speaks to me from that perspective of, like, sometimes it is better to put yourself into that organization, or whatever it may be, to try to change things from the inside. Next person, since I just saw Ochette on the screen, I'll go ahead and talk about her. Here's one thing I love about Ochette's story. And a lot of this comes from, like, after the, like, on the epilogue, though. Ochette makes the comment where she says something along the lines of, compared to the rest of you guys, my goals are so small. And I love that. I love that they do that, because the thing is that I feel like people do make comparisons, and this, again, I'm kind of comparing this to reality, where people think that because maybe they don't want to do things that are as big, that maybe that it's not as special or as important. And that just simply isn't true. Your goals and ambitions and what makes you happy does not need to be some grand, huge deal. It could be something just as simple as, I want to eat jerky every day with my buddies. There's nothing wrong with that. And I love how the rest of the characters are like, you do you, Ochette. And, like, you don't need to have some grand ambition to, like... I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. But I just really appreciate that they took the time to actually have a character who, ultimately, a lot of the stuff she does is just for, like, her village and, like, the people that she cares about. But that's fine. Like, sometimes, like, that, you know, you helping the people that you know and making sure that those around you that are close to you are happy is just as important as trying to change the world. And I don't know, I just really love that. Also, her final boss, to me, was really fun. I've heard a lot of people don't really like it. I really liked it. It was the one boss that almost killed me, mostly because I was so used to just Hikari one-shotting everything up to that point. I wasn't paying attention to his health when he got hit for something that took him down to 1 damage. And then on the next, like, I did something instead of healing him, and then on the next attack, they killed him. But, I don't know, I thought that was kind of funny personally, but yeah. Yeah, it just, I don't know, I really enjoyed that dynamic. And then, by comparison, you also, you know, you have someone like Partitio. Partitio, not that I disliked him when I first met him, I was not expecting to enjoy his story as much as I did. Partitio, it's... Again, I'm making a lot of comparisons to reality here, but, like, the thing I love about Partitio is that he wants to, like, end poverty, but not in what I would consider to be a naive way. You know, he doesn't just stroll through town handing out money to everyone, thinking, oh, that's gonna fix the problem. He's like, no, everybody has something they can do that can contribute to society, and those people deserve to be paid enough to live a happy life. And I'm like, it's such a simple philosophy, and I love it. And it's like, you know, you see nowadays, there's so many places around the world that, you know, it's... Well, I don't want to get into, like, politics and jobs and stuff like that, but it's no, like, a lot of people know that there are a lot of people out there that work difficult, stressful jobs, and, you know, they do what they need to do to try to make money and live. And, you know, even people that might not have a job for whatever reason, you know, everyone deserves to be happy. Especially if they're going to be willing to, you know, work for it. And that's the one thing that I really enjoy about Partitio, is that he's just like, yeah, there's no reason that, like, the guys at the top need to take everything and just, like, kind of basically debt slavery the employees. And maybe that's a bit of an extreme example, but you'll see in a lot of his story missions that that's basically what's happening. They're getting paid so little, they're getting taxed so hard by Rock, that they can't even do anything. They're going to work just to make enough money to barely survive. How are you ever going to do anything in life without that? And Partitio, I love Partitio's thing where he doesn't care about money at all. Like, money to him, he even says it several times. Money is not evil, it's just a means of getting things. You know, that's simply all it is. And he's like, you can be good with it, you can be bad with it. I don't know, and that I really enjoyed that. And I love how he just goes through beating up all these evil corporate guys, and then being like, hey, I know we were just fighting and all that stuff, but, like, you're pretty good at this. You want to work for me? Like, I love that. You know, I wish there was more things like that, even as ridiculous as it sounds. I mean, obviously, if someone attacked you with a giant battle train, probably should be in prison. But hey, you know what? I'm going to take a little bit of the fantasy with it. You know, I really enjoyed that. And then you have some of the darker stories, like, you know, Throné. One of the things I love about Throné is that when she finds out her past and all that ridiculous stuff that happened, she does have a moment where she basically it's going through her head how gross a lot of that stuff was. But the one thing I love about it is she doesn't have some existential crisis and breakdown. And this is actually a pet peeve of mine, where somebody finds out something about their past, about like how they were created or something like that. Like, for example, I know this is probably a really obscure reference that I don't know if anyone's going to see it, because it was the Final Fantasy 15 DLC with, I can't even remember his name, it's been so long since I played, the dude that uses the gun. He basically finds out that he was like a clone soldier or something, and then like, he's just like, oh man, I don't deserve to be alive. And like, he just whines all the time, and I'm not saying that like something crazy like that wouldn't be hard to deal with, but I love how Throné actually handles it how I feel most people would do. They're like, wow, that's messed up. That is upsetting. But whatever. I'm alive. I'm going to go live my own life. I'm not bound by what happened in the past, what brought me here. And, you know, I also just really enjoy thief-style characters. The ones that are like, oh yeah, I do all these bad things, but like, also at the same time, I'm kind of a good person. You know, granted, with my Throné, I stole candy from kids, and I stole the Brooch of Joy, so I'm kind of a monster. I won't blame Throné for that. That was on me and my inability to not, like, I just, if I could steal it, I had to steal it. Sorry. Throné, that's on me, I apologize for that, but I really enjoyed her story. And then you have Temenos. The thing I really liked about Temenos, and this is probably going to be a very unpopular opinion, but and hear me out on this, for story reasons, I'm glad Crick died. Now, again, I loved Crick. Crick was such a good character, but when I play a game, and if I feel that the game wants me to take it seriously for dark themes, then they need to follow through with that. And I don't know like how many other people share that opinion, but when you have a game and you're like, oh yeah, all these dark and evil things happen, but then the good guys are always winning, and if good guys get hurt, they never like die, they're just critically injured, but then they like survive. There's nothing wrong with that style of game, but for me personally, if a game wants to say that it has dark themes, I really want it to embrace the dark themes. Kind of going back to like Hikari, he starts out and like literally the whole village, and I know they don't explicitly say it, but you know the children and stuff are getting killed by Mugen's men at the beginning. With Temenos, you know, Crick, he's just so just and so right, and even though he... Like, the thing I love about Crick is that he is so annoyed with Temenos. Because, yeah, Temenos does tease him a lot. But at the same time, Crick knows that he's a good person. And so Crick, despite maybe having, like, being annoyed with him, will still listen to what he has to say. And I think that, like, honestly, a lot of people could learn from his example, because a lot of times people will be like, I don't like you, so I don't care about anything you have to say. I don't care if it's a good, valid point. Crick could have been like that. I feel that a lot of people are like that, and maybe that's me being pessimistic, but the thing about Crick is that he's just like, he usually was a pretty good judge of character, and if he respected you, then he would always listen to what you would have to say. And he would always try to do the right thing until it eventually got him killed, which was sad. I was very sad when Crick died. But I was also... I would be like, this is a good way to progress the story. At least to me. Again, I'm not saying that I'm happy that Crick died, but I think that that really set up Temenos to feel like at the end of his story, to really give it a lot of weight and meaning. Which, And I also like the whole, like, I'm a detective scenes. Those were really fun, too, because it gave a very different feel from a lot of the other ones. So yeah, really enjoyed that. See, the last two were Castti. Castti, as a lot of people say, yeah, her story is just, it gets, at first you start out, like, when I started it, I was like, it seems pretty generic. You know, whatever. But then you get to, like, a couple of chapters in, and it's just like, alright, going back to what I said about dark themes, Castti, I love Casti's story, too. Like, just the feel of her with her, like, basically her children. I know everyone makes the joke about her being the mom, but just to see them, like, basically one by one getting picked off and dying while trying to, like, save everyone. And then Castti having to live with that burden, and she's just like, I have to keep going on, because if I don't, you know, not only will a lot more people die, but all of the sacrifices that they all made would have been for nothing. And, you know, her boss fight was really cool. The whole rain thing, I thought was like a really unique mechanic. You know, I wish I would have seen more stuff like that through the rest of the game. And I know that that's not the only time that whole, like, HP thing happens, but, like, you know, that was a really cool thing. And then, of course, at the end, she's just such a badass that she's just like, well, time to make this cure for this rain, like, just right now, to save everyone. And, like, oh, man, like, hers just had so much weight behind it that I just really, really enjoyed it. And, you know, again, another part of it is that, and this one is kind of a little different than Throné's, because I can understand why someone might break down based off of what happened in her story. But the thing I love about Castti is she's just like, I have to keep going. I can't let this stop me. And she always sticks to her convictions. Well, to be fair, I guess a lot of the characters do that, but I'm going to talk about that when I get to the final bosses. And then, of course, you have Osvald. I did not put Osvald last because I think less of him or anything. I really enjoyed Osvald's story, mostly because he goes from, like, this generic, Harvey, I gotta get revenge on Harvey, the fire in my breasts, Harvey, you know, he just, I was like, alright, dude, I understand, I need to hate this guy. But then, when you get later in the story, and he's just like, wait a minute, I still have something to live for. And, like, the tone shifts so hard. I don't know, like, how... I never see people talking about this. But Osvald, I know that, like, overall his personality is, like, very cold and stuff like that. But, like, with this sort of feel that, like, he is also genuinely a nice guy. But he goes from just, like, this... he almost sounds like a zombie, just talking about Harvey, 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 the fire in my breast, to just, like, becoming more like a normal person when he finds out, wait a minute, my daughter's still alive. Who cares about revenge? I need to save her. And he immediately puts her as the priority. And it becomes, you know, a story where you're trying to save someone rather than just pure revenge. And, you know, kind of the weird thing, I wonder if they're going to have DLC in this game, because one of the things is that you don't actually kill Harvey, as far as I know. I'm pretty sure, like, because when you fight him, he seems to just disappear. And then you see some notes later on where Ori says that, like, they don't know where he went, but he didn't die. I wonder if they're going to say more about that, but, no, I just thought that was kind of neat. But, like, Osvald's story, I just love that tonal shift where they go from, like, this generic revenge story, in my opinion, to just, like, no, I still have something to live for. And it's almost like he becomes more human, so to speak. Like, he sort of comes back to life a little bit. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on the story and why I really like all of those. Obviously, the boss fight music is great. What else can I say about the music? It's all just great. I listened to so many of the songs. But then you have, like, the boss fights. And I'll admit, I'm one of those people that I wish there was a difficulty setting. And I want to be very clear here when I say this, because I know it can basically be demeaning and insulting to say the game's too easy. Here's the thing. We're all going to be good at certain games, and we're all going to be bad at certain games. You put, like, a Mortal Kombat style game in front of me, I'm going to be getting wrecked on the easiest settings. You know, that's just how it is. And, you know, that's why I wish there was a difficulty setting, so people could kind of adjust it on the fly. But, you know, it is what it is. I still really enjoyed the game. I didn't get to see a lot of the boss mechanics, because by the time I got to them, you know, a lot of the times it was just like, put a debuff on Lionheart's axe, GG, it's all over, you know, other than, like, the final couple of bosses. But still, the bosses compared to the first game had more mechanics, and I feel like they had a lot more, like, flavor and personality to them. Like, because, you know, in Octopath 1, you could just straight up one-shot all the bosses, and I didn't even know that there was dialogue for a lot of the bosses in the first game. You know, you could just, you know, outright kill them, and you don't get to hear any of it. And, you know, but really the big ones I want to highlight are the two endgame bosses, the final boss and the secret boss. And I'll start with the final boss. I love the final boss. And the reason why is because of how the fight feels. Obviously, there's the music aspect of it, but when they, like, you're sitting there fighting, and then it pulls out all 8 characters, I was just like, yes, we're about to mess this guy up. And then, when you go to every single character has unique dialogue when they're ready to attack the boss. Like, if you have them selected, they will all say something unique, and they're all just so good. All of that, you know, I'm going to call it flavor text. And, like, you know, it's all voice acted too, which is awesome. It was such a cool moment to have that. And I really don't know what else there is to say about it. I felt like they just did a really great job with that fight. Especially, like, if you have to actually, like, fight him for a while, you get to hear, like, all the voice lines, and he can, like, hit your whole team of 8, but then you can, like, swap between them. It just, I don't know, it's really cool. I don't know what else there is to say about it, but then we get to the secret boss. And, you know, you've probably seen some of the guides, or at the very least, you know, I've made guides and various challenge videos of the secret boss. I do wish there were more secret bosses, to be honest, but still, you know, I'll deal with the one. The thing I love about that boss is that, I know in a lot of my guide videos, I tend to be very specific, like, this is how, like, you should build your characters, this is who should be on what, you know, phase and all that stuff. But keep in mind that I've beaten that boss in a bunch of different ways. I don't show a lot of them in my videos, because when I make those guide videos, or when I make those challenge videos, you know, this is more so for the guide videos. If I beat the boss with a certain composition, but it was somewhat sloppy, or maybe there's, like, some things about it that are unreliable, I'm not going to use that as a guide. You know, the reason why I chose the setups that I used were simply because they were the most consistent things that I could find. But the thing about that boss is there's actually a ton of different strategies that you can use. And I've seen videos of other people using different strategies. People have explained some things, like, you know, for example, like so a lot of the things that I showed in that recent guide video on the secret boss, I did learn from other people, like the elemental souls thing, where you use doters and then throw the decaying dragon essence against the elemental souls, and it will take away 4 shields without triggering any of the retaliates. You know, there's so many cool strategies that you can actually do with it, and one thing that I always want to tell people is, like, don't feel like you need to be locked in to, like, what a guide is saying. You know, even though my guides will say, use this, you don't have to. There's lots of other ways, and I see people online telling people all the time, you have to min-max, and you have to use this specific setup. it just simply isn't true. And that's part of the reason why I like that boss, is because there are a lot of different ways to beat it. You can use a bunch of different team compositions, and that variety is what I think makes the boss really cool. And at the same time, he can still wipe you even if you're level 99 and have all the best stuff in the game. He was actually, now that I think about it, he's the only boss that ever actually killed me. I did die one other time in the campaign from a bewildering grace, but I would say probably thanks to how much time I got to spend in the demo, a lot of the other bosses, they never really stood a chance, but like, you know, he's just like so strong and has so many mechanics that like, you can't just brute force him. You have to actually like learn how he works, and then you have to form a team that kind of like deals with all the various problems that he can cause for your team. And to me, that is what a boss fight should be. It's, oh well, he killed me this time because he did this to my team. So next time I'm going to put this item on this character, or maybe a subclass or something, that will allow me to not have to deal with that problem. Then you get a little further, then you get killed by something else maybe, or maybe, you know, maybe you beat the fight, maybe you die from something else, and you're like, okay, so he can do that later in the fight. I'm going to swap this character with this so I can deal with that problem. That to me is what makes a really great boss fight. And that's why the secret boss is one of my favorite boss fights out of any game, especially turn-based. In fact, I think out of all the turn-based games I've ever played, he probably is the most exciting boss that I've ever fought, because you basically have to obey his mechanics unless you, like, I don't know. If you're looking at my guide videos, I usually show ways of killing him to where he never gets a chance to do anything. But that, again, comes from a lot of that testing that I was talking about, where you do something like, you know, like, just to give a little insight into, like, my original process, it's not like I knew that Ochette could break everything with axes. I went into the fight, and I literally just let myself die, but I used Osvald to analyze everything to see what their weaknesses were. Then I was like, oh, they're all weak to axes. Let me go find an axe monster, you know. And then, you know, you can ignore some of the mechanics, but, you know, I don't really know what else to say about that fight. I just really like the way they set it up. And, you know, I would love to see more of that. Like, I probably shouldn't encourage this sort of stuff, but, like, I would pay for a DLC that was literally just more secret bosses. That have, like, mechanics and stuff that you either have to figure out or you have to, like, deal with. That would just be my opinion. But, you know, I play these games usually for the boss fights. And, you know, speaking of that, the other part of it is I think that the optimizations in this game are really fun. I know that a lot of people complain that you get too powerful too quickly. But here's the thing that, and this is just my own personal opinion, I would prefer a game that allows you to get insanely strong than one that it feels like you're just getting stronger, but like you're always like on par with the enemies, if that makes sense. Now, the balance to find there is really hard from a development standpoint, I'm sure, because, you know, where do you draw the line? But I want to feel like by going and taking time to get the best gear and the best subclasses and trying to optimize, I want to feel that power. If I feel like I'm just kind of keeping par with the enemy, it doesn't feel as satisfying. And so I really like the way this game allows you to become more powerful. And, you know, you can try to stack a lot of DPS onto a single character to make them deal massive damage, but of course the trade-off is that some of your other characters are not going to perform as well, but it depends on what kind of composition you want to run. For me, personally, I'm a big fan of having like 1 or 2 DPS characters that are just fed everything by support characters. And, I don't know, maybe that's the norm, but I know some people, they try to make it to where, like, every single one of their characters are, like, super dangerous and lethal. I prefer to just feed 1 or 2 characters that have, like, all the damage stuff. But, again, I like that the game gives you that option to kind of go between the two of those. and you actually do really feel the power, you know, especially when you hit that 99,000 for the first time. You know, it's a good feeling. But, you know, I have no idea how long I've been talking, so I guess I'll kind of call it here. But, you know, I don't know. I can't, it's hard for me to describe just how much I really like Octopath. And, you know, I don't know how successful this game has been so far for the company, but I really hope that it is going to get the respect that it deserves. And I also really hope that they're going to keep making them, because I've seen people talking about how there are maps of the original game in some various locations. Honestly, it would be super cool if in Octopath 3, assuming they make one, that because they've invented better ships that are steam-powered, that they can actually cross the ocean and get to the original game and, like, connect and then see what's been going on over there. I know some people have said this is a prequel. I personally don't think it's a prequel, because I feel that if it was, like, I understand the arguments as to why people think that it's a prequel because of the, you know, Al Hornberg. But the reason why I don't think it is because, one, you didn't have anything anywhere close to steam engines in the original. And I know you could argue, like, well, maybe no one over there has ever thought to do it. You know, if they're separated and they're not communicating, obviously things are going to develop differently. But I feel like there are just things going on in Octopath Traveler 2, like too many advanced things that just don't exist in the other one. You know, so that's kind of one of my first points. But the other, if Al really is just the younger version of the king from the first game, how did he, like, move the gate there? Because my understanding from the first game is that the gate was an actual physical location at Hornburg. So, are they saying that he was somehow able to collect it, and by you beating Galdera, he was able to, like, bring it back with him all the way back to, like, wherever that is in the world? I don't know. The Gates of Finis being in Octopath 2, I don't know. I don't know if they just kind of did it just because, or if there is some reasoning for it. But, you know, I'm not going to say, like, definitively, oh, it's definitely not a prequel, but I'm more leaning towards it happens in the future. Now, do I have an explanation as to why the Gates of Finis went from Hornburg to here? Nope. I don't. I don't understand why Galdera would be stronger here, especially if he's been beaten before. You know, part of me thinks that they just did it as an extra fight, and they weren't really caring about, like, whether it made sense with the first one, but who knows, you know. Anyway, yeah, that's just how I feel about the game and kind of the stories, and I probably am not going to be doing any more challenges. I did find a way to do the makeshift weapon only, but it requires luck, and, you know, some of my runs require luck, you know, like the level 1 thing that I did. I could take the time until I get, like, the right one to make it work, but I honestly just, I kind of want to move on to some other games. I've been starting Chained Echoes, so I'm probably going to be playing that. I would love another reason to come back and play Octopath Traveler 2, but I probably won't unless somebody asks me to make more guide videos. I like making guide videos, especially if people want them, but I feel like a lot of the information's already there at this point, so I just wanted to make this one last video that just is talking about why I think it is such a great game that deserves a lot of attention and respect. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry for rambling so long, but if you stuck with it to the end, I appreciate it. And if I decide to make any more videos, I'll see you then.